Joining me now with the devastating impact Democrat policies are having on the Golden State is former California Congressman and Trump Media CEO Devin Nunes. Devin, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
As always, thank you, Maria.
And I know that what drove you into politics initially is your farming background. I've spoken with you many times when you're standing in front of tractors, and you've talked so much about growing up in the farm grounds of California. Now you are identifying specific policies that needed to be done that weren't, which got us here to these wildfires. Tell us what went wrong.
Well, really, lack of common sense and how the world actually functions is what went wrong with politicians who just lack common sense. This has been pointed out by Republicans for many, many decades. So it's about 30, 40 years of bad policies, radical environmental groups who brought lawsuits, who then influenced politicians in Sacramento. And the Democrats have kept doing the same thing over and over and over again. And guess what? We're having the same catastrophic results in California. So there's a short-term issue that happened that's not unusual, but we had a very wet year last year. California is a Mediterranean climate. It's one of the most rich and most beautiful places on the planet. It's the largest agricultural state. So what happens when you mix good soil, sun, and water? You get vegetation growth. And if you look at the way that Los Angeles has been built, it's surrounded by these hillsides that for a century and a half largely were managed by farmers and ranchers where you would have grazing that was done. So this year, as we went through the dry summer that's totally normal, we actually have not. California has not received much rainfall this year. So you get the winds and it almost acts as if it just dries it out, becomes brittle. And so the minute one fire starts and you get 50, 100 mile an hour winds, embers go everywhere. And this is it's like surrounding your house. And in this case, 20 million people in the Los Angeles basin. Think of it, it should be thinking it like jet fuel surrounding your house. When you have brush that grows up at a level that's 5 feet tall, you better do something about it. So President Trump had pointed this out. Now, there are about 40 years of policies that are very, very critical to this. But it's pretty simple. It's water, it's grazing, it's logging. Those industries have all been hampered. If you look at agriculture, we're down in land that's being farmed because of lack of water. This means when farms don't get water, guess what? The LA basin also doesn't get water. So as you're building out and adding people and adding homes in the Los Angeles basin, if you don't have an adequate, abundant water supply and you're rationing water, the people that are building those homes, the city planners, they're not putting in green areas, they're not building fire breaks. If you run the farmers and ranchers out of the state of California, guess what? You don't have the animals to sit there and graze. So a combination of the proper land management would solve all of this problem. Now, what's going to happen? They're going to, just like they've done for the last 20 years, California's going to run to the federal government, and they're going to ask for money. And I think this time, hopefully, I think President Trump and the Republicans in Congress will say, look, we're just not going to keep doing the same thing again. So California's going to need a lot of money, and I feel bad. I have friends that lost homes. Some of the most wealthy real estate in the planet has burnt to a crisp, is burnt to the ground, and it all should be built back. But it has to be built back when California decides that they're actually going to use the water infrastructure that's been built in the state for the last 100 years. They're going to actually use it and allow the water to flow into places like Los Angeles. They're going to bring the timber industry back so you can actually efficiently go and get the logs and the dead trees and everything out of the forest, and so that you can actually, and then also managing that vegetation growth and building in fire breaks. That's what has to happen. Now, what I'm concerned about is, will these people that lost their home, who have consistently voted for people like Gavin Newsom, Jerry Brown, before that, who've given money to these radical green causes, who have embraced the Green New Deal, are they going to sing from the same verse that they've been singing from for 30 years? And are they going to tell the people, oh, this is global warming. There's no issue here. This is all about climate change. If the politicians in California say that again, hopefully the voters in California will say, we're not going to take this nonsense anymore. Let's just let the water flow. Let's let the animals back on the land. Let's mow the grass. Let's clean the forest. Let's build proper fire breaks.
Yeah.
Let's have green areas. That's how you solve this problem, Maria.
So you're saying as a result of the Green New Deal, as a result of the climate change agenda of the Democrats and the Biden administration and the Gavin Newsom administration, they stopped logging. They stopped the timber industry from coming down, cutting trees, logging. They stopped the farmers from allowing the animals to graze, and they stopped storing water because of the climate change agenda?
Yeah, this radical idea. I mean, this green new economy is really a red one. It's one that brings on death and devastation. And these policies have been going on in California for a long time. So much so, think about this. California is in population decline right now. There's people in California who actually celebrate this as if that people in this land should not be used, which is preposterous. This is the #1 agricultural state. It's a beautiful state, and it's one that deserves common sense policies. But in order to get those common sense policies, I think it's going to depend on finally somebody like President Trump, who in 2016 came out. He owns properties in Los Angeles County. He came and visited the rest of the state where we've been experiencing this. Since I was a young child, we've been experiencing this nonsense where you've taken land out of production. And I think the president looked at this massive water infrastructure, the greatest that's ever been built in the history of the planet, and said, now why aren't we moving some of this water? Why is this water going out to the Pacific Ocean? I don't think that President Trump, at that time, he was a candidate back in 2016. We were driving down the freeway. He's talked about this many times, and he would ask, why is one side of the field, is it dry? Why is it green? Then there were catastrophic fires during the Trump administration. And what happened? Basically, Trump left office, and now we're left with the same policies came back. And so hopefully, I think you'll see the Trump administration who will not partake in this nonsense again. And there's going to have to be real policy changes that come out of Sacramento.
Before the money goes to Sacramento, is what you're saying. This is just extraordinary. Yeah. Devin, before you go, I've got 2 items for you before you go. Number one, Meta. I thought of you when I saw Mark Zuckerberg completely do a 180, saying we're not going to censor anybody anymore. For a year or two, they've been saying we haven't been censoring anyone. As the head of Truth Social and Trump Media Group, your reaction to what went on at Meta. And I also want to get your take on the fact that Jack Smith resigning from the Department of Justice, Devin.
Well, look, President Trump didn't need a company. I didn't need a job. We were perfectly happy. We had to build Truth Social because of the things that were happening at Twitter and Facebook. And I would say this, if Zuckerberg is having a mea culpa moment, that's great. But let's remember, he spent $450 million of his own money to sway the 2020 election in favor of the left. So if he wants to do a mea culpa, I think he should spend $450. Maybe you add some interest on top of that. Maybe it's $550 million. And he ought to help companies that are out there like Fox News, Truth Social, now Twitter with X, Rumble, that have been fighting this censorship. Every single day we wake up and fight this censorship. He ought to take that money and join the fight and go after these woke corporations that are continuing to try to starve Fox and others of advertising. As it relates to Jack Smith, don't let the door hit you on the way out. One of the most corrupt politicians in history at a place where we don't need politicians in the Department of Justice. We need a fair justice system so that criminals are held accountable. That's not what this guy did. He has a horrible, horrible record, and good riddance to him. Yeah. Does Kash Patel get confirmed as FBI director? I hope so. I think, if anybody can clean it up, it'll be Kash Patel. All right, we'll leave it there. Devin, good to talk with you. Thanks very much.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.